Hey guys, it's your boy, the Theatric Dyspraxic here for another awesome video. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Just kidding. I hate when people open like that. But what's up everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another one of my videos. If you haven't seen the first one, it kind of explains what I'm going to be doing, which is basically to just talk about things like a boring person with nothing better to do. Now that's entertainment. One of the major things I'll be talking about in these videos is a neurological condition called dyspraxia, which is a condition that I have, and if I could, I would like to try and raise a little bit of awareness for. Obviously, I'm not very well known, but I hope people who might stumble upon these videos might learn a little bit about it and understand what it is. And maybe they might share it with some others and we can get a little attention drawn to this condition which affects a lot of people. It affects so many areas of a person's life, and if more people knew about it, then people with dyspraxia may not have to live in such silence. I talked a little bit about dyspraxia in my first video when I compared it to a faint phone signal. And in future videos I'm going to be discussing more specific areas that are affected by dyspraxia. But today I'm going to give a basic overview of the condition and briefly talk about my experiences with it. So I have several resources that I've brought up from the internet, some guides here to educate you a little bit about this condition, and in the process I'm going to read off a lot of symptoms and just kind of go into a little more detail about them. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started and relay some information. The first guide I'll pull out is from the official Wikipedia page. Wikipedia is my education. First off, Wikipedia doesn't really refer to it as dyspraxia. They call it developmental coordination disorder. So what it says that dyspraxia is, which they call it developmental coordination disorder, they say developmental coordination disorder, also known as developmental dyspraxia or simply dyspraxia, is a chronic neurological disorder beginning in childhood. It's also known to affect planning of movements and coordination as a result of brain messages not being accurately transmitted to the body. Impairments in skilled motor movements per a child's chronological age must interfere with activities of daily living. A diagnosis of developmental coordination disorder is then reached only in the absence of other neurological impairments like cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, or Parkinson's disease. According to Can Child in Canada, this disorder affects 5 to 6% of school-age children. However, this disorder does progress towards adulthood, therefore making it a lifelong condition. Oh gee, really? I didn't know that. Classification. Developmental coordination disorder is classified in the 5th revision of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5, as a motor disorder in the category of neurodevelopmental disorders. Signs and symptoms. Various areas of development can be affected by developmental coordination disorder, and these will persist into adulthood, as dyspraxia has no cure. Often various coping strategies are developed, and these can be enhanced through occupational therapy, psychomotor therapy, physiotherapy, speech therapy, or psychological training. In addition to the physical impairments, developmental coordination disorder is associated with problems with memory, especially working memory. This typically results in difficulty remembering instructions, difficulty organizing one's time, and remembering deadlines, increased propensity to lose things or problems carrying out tasks which require remembering several steps in a sequence, such as cooking. Wow, some of this lingo is stuff that a lot of dyspraxics would probably have a hard time wrapping their heads around. Whilst most of the general population experience these problems to some extent, they have much more significant impact on the lives of dyspraxic people. However, many dyspraxics have excellent long-term memories despite poor short-term memory. Many dyspraxics benefit from working in a structured environment, as repeating the same routines minimizes difficulty with time management and allows them to commit procedures to long-term memory. People with developmental coordination disorder sometimes have difficulty moderating the amount of sensory information that their body is constantly sending them. So as a result, dyspraxics are prone to sensory overload and panic attacks. Moderate to extreme difficulty doing physical tasks is experienced by some dyspraxics, and fatigue is common because so much extra energy is expended while trying to execute physical movements correctly. Some, but not all, dyspraxics suffer from hypotonia, low muscle tone, which, like dyspraxia, can detrimentally affect balance. So far a lot of this stuff that I just read is stuff that I personally deal with. Especially things like the short-term memory that it talks about. I have pretty bad short-term memory. Like if somebody will tell me something, or they'll show me how to do something, and then they'll expect me to do it. And most people, you show them how to do it, oh, they remember. For me, it takes several times and several attempts before I'm able to actually fully grasp what I'm doing. And there's a lot of times, particularly in like workplace environments, where I'm doing something that I haven't really quite done before. And so whenever I do it at first, I don't seem to understand it. And then after a few times, I finally am able to wrap my head around it, and I start going, oh yeah, of course. But it's interesting what they say about short-term memory compared to long-term memory, because while I do have trouble with short-term memories and learning instructions and remembering instructions um, and rules and things, uh, is difficult for me. One of the reasons why I never really got into video games, uh, I've always been able to remember very specific events in my life, and not just like major events, but minor events. Like I remember just fleeting moments. I have this memory of being 6, and we had this green tree house that was up, when we moved into this house, which has since been torn down. And I have this specific memory of being 6 and climbing down the ladder and just stopping and just kind of looking off and looking at like the sunset and the horizon. Uh, and I just remember being 6 years old, just kind of like, on the ladder, just like staring off and just like wondering about life and wondering, you know, where am I gonna lead? What's gonna happen when I grow up? So that's very specific memories. Stuff like just being in the bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror. I remember being in class, and I remember like specific things that I thought, or I remember a moment, just a random moment, and remember the song that was stuck in my head at that time. So, like, my memory works in very strange and odd ways, where I'll forget things that are important. Like my brother will tell me things that supposedly happened and during our childhood, and I'll have no memory of it. And the other interesting thing is the whole sensory overload thing, and that's part of having both dyspraxia and ADHD, because you have so much going on in your head, and there's so much sensory information going on that you just become overwhelmed. And there have been moments where I've had panic attacks, and I've been able to hide them a lot of the times, but it has happened. So now we're going to go to gross motor control. It says whole body movement and motor coordination issues mean that major developmental targets including walking, running, climbing, and jumping can be affected. The difficulties vary from person to person and can include the following: poor timing. That's really not very good for an actor. Poor balance, sometimes even falling over mid-step. Now, I don't think that I've ever tripped over my feet, as some people say, and I've heard other dyspraxics say that they've literally tripped themselves. Um, Most of the time, when I've lost my balance, I've been able to catch it, but I lose my balance quite often. I remember a very specific memory in high school, my freshman year. I was in the lunchroom talking to a friend of mine, or someone that I knew, some sort of acquaintance, and we were laughing and joking around. And I was standing right in front of like this little cooler area that contained all like the bottled milk, like chocolate milk and stuff. And I was standing right in front of it, and the person I was talking to, for some reason, decided to just slowly, just kind of like push me, like very, very gently push me, and I just like fell into it. And of course, I knew that he was joking. He was just doing it kind of as a little gag. So I laughed, and the guy was like laughing too, and he said, "You have really awful balance." And I said, "Yeah, I do." But my balance is still very poor, and for that reason, I've never been able to ride a bike, which I know sounds crazy, and I always wish that I could, because it seems like fun, But anytime that I tried to learn how to ride a bike, I, and riding a bike is not even something that you learn how to do because it's such a natural thing, There's nothing complicated about learning how to ride a bike. You just get on a bike, you sit on the seat, you spin the pedals with your feet. But it requires balance, and if you don't have balance, you're not really going to be able to do it. And it's kind of funny when I have people like my brother, tell me, maybe you can, learn how to ride a bike. And it's like, I know how to ride a bike, I just can't ride a bike. You know what I mean? So it also says difficulty combining movements into a controlled sequence. Uh, I experience this a lot with my hands. That's probably the thing that I struggle with the most is just my hands. I can never seem to control it in the best way. For instance, I work as a cashier now, so I'm bagging stuff a lot as I scan them. Um, and I'm always having trouble maneuvering stuff into the bag, and I feel like I'm. a hand, It's very strange, and so that's pretty much what it is. So many things that you do physically require a combination of movements into what they call a controlled sequence. Difficulty remembering the next movement in a sequence. I could probably think of several instances where this has happened, where I'll remember different steps, but there's like one step that I just completely forget. Problems with spatial awareness, that in itself I probably struggle with, because sometimes I'll try to grab something and then I don't even like realize that it's too far away. It's almost like I have poor depth perception or something. Or I'll walk by something and then I'll bump into it, not realizing that it's closer than I think it is. And I've done that with people, I've bumped into people a lot. I do that a lot. It's something that is very frequent in my day-to-day activities. Trouble picking up and holding on to simple objects such as pencils owing to poor muscle tone or proprioception. I don't know if I do have a poor grip. I don't have a poor grip with such simple things like pencils or spoons. I do drop things a lot, especially being a cashier. You work with objects that are fragile, and I always worry that I'm going to drop it or it's going to slip out of my hand. And things often happen. Like when I give people their change, a lot of times I hand it to them and then it just falls right out because I guess I don't place it in their hand correctly. Difficulty in determining left from right. The only time that I've ever had trouble with this was in theater. But that's because it's confusing anyway, because they have stage left, stage right, up stage left, down stage right. And so sometimes, I mean, it's easy for anybody to forget. But as far as, I mean, I'm very aware that this is left and this is right. It's not complicated for me. I don't have trouble with that. I understand some people do, but I don't. Cross-laterality, ambidextrity, and a shift in the preferred hand are also common in people with developmental coordination disorder. So that's a very interesting thing, and I want to go into that more specifically in a future video. But just to keep this shorter, which I'm sure it's already kind of dragging on a bit. But I am a little bit ambidextrous. I'm mainly left-handed. I write with my left hand. I eat with my left hand. Generally, I'm left-handed. My mother and I are the two lefties in the family. There's a lot of things that I do with my right hand. Starting from when I was a kid, being in class, and I would write on the chalkboard or the marker board, whichever one we had, and I would write with my right hand because it was easier for me. Like I would just, and I don't know if it's because I could see it easier as opposed to my left hand, or that other people could see it easier, but I write on chalkboards and marker boards and stuff with my right hand. There's certain things that I eat with my right hand. Like I'll eat mashed potatoes with my right hand for some reason. A lot of the times I'll throw and catch with my right hand. So it is kind of a cross dominance type thing, and I do have those moments where it's hard to distinguish. And there's things that I do where I can do both very proficiently. Like I can write with my left or my right hand. Neither one is very good as far as handwriting goes, but it's something I'm able to do with both hands. Um, I used to have trouble with writing legibly. Now my handwriting is just kind of sloppy, but you can read it. Fine motor control. Fine motor problems can cause difficulty with a wide variety of other tasks, such as using a knife and fork, fastening buttons and shoelaces, cooking, brushing one's teeth, styling one's hair, shaving, applying cosmetics, opening jars and packets, locking and unlocking doors, and doing housework. Difficulties with fine motor coordination lead to problems with handwriting, which I just talked about, which may be due to either ideational or ideomotor difficulties. Problems associated with this area may include learning basic movement patterns, developing a desired writing speed, establishing the correct pencil grip, the acquisition of graphemes, e.g. the letters of the Latin alphabet, as well as numbers. So I want to go and look back over some of these that I just talked about. I don't have trouble using a knife and fork. Fastening buttons and shoelaces. Now with buttons, you know, sometimes I do button the wrong one, and that used to get very frustrating because I would just go down, and then someone will say, you know, your buttons are all wrong. Oh, I wasn't aware. So I would try to do it, unbutton it, button it again, trying to match the right buttons to the right, you know, whatever, buttonhole. Um, Probably not the name of it, but I just call it a buttonhole. Buttonhole. And I'll get frustrated at it. I'm going to just kind of stop right there. I could go on and read the rest of it, but there's not really a whole lot of interesting information that you can't already figure out. There is no cure for dyspraxia. It's just something that you learn how to manage. But I wanted to briefly talk about some of the things that I deal with as far as dyspraxia, and I wanted to give you a sort of list of symptoms and give a little bit of overview of my connection with those specific symptoms. Some of these things are things that I want to go in more detail in future videos, but I wanted to give a brief overview now. I want to thank everybody for watching. There's several people from a dyspraxia Facebook group that I sent my videos to who have seen these videos and have subscribed. So I want to thank you guys for watching these videos, and I hope you continue watching more. Again, not every one of my videos is going to be about dyspraxia, because I feel like that would not be very interesting, and I don't feel like that's the only aspect to who I am is dyspraxia. I think that there's other things that are more worthy of talking about. But stay tuned for the next video. Please like, and if you want to subscribe. I'm not gonna make you. I'm not gonna tell you to subscribe, but I'm going to give you the option. If you want to subscribe, please subscribe. I don't know where I'm pointing at right now. The subscribe button is below, right at my thick thighs. Thank you very much, and good night, everybody.